Carlos Baleba may be more realistic than we first thought, with Manchester United believing if they could get the sales through that needed to be done, they could get their man. We're going to talk about Baleba, who's given the green light to Manchester United, but Alejandro Garnacho has agreed terms with Chelsea, and AC Milan have put in a bit of a crazy sort of bid or offer to Manchester United, which would be a loan, but it would have with an upfront fee, which is nice, of about 4 million, and an option to buy of around 40 million. But Højlund wants to stay at United. The interesting thing is Manchester United has set up a meeting with Højlund today or tomorrow to discuss his future now Benjamin Seska's in the door, which I think would be indications of he's not wanted. And that may force Højlund to accept the fact that he may need to go. We're going to talk about the latest on Sesko having his medical today, should be announced tomorrow. We'll talk about the latest on Carlos Baleba and Manchester United's midfield plans. So, hello, and welcome back to Alice Talks Football, and welcome back to a live Manchester United news, transfer news, and update show. We're going to do a nice short live show, getting into all the news, getting into all the updates. I hope you guys are doing well. And yeah, let's start with news on Alejandro Garnacho. Here we go. So Fabrizio Romano has said, Alejandro Garnacho has agreed every detail of personal terms with Chelsea. Talks with Manchester United about a fee will follow. So he's basically verbally agreed personal terms with Chelsea, but before that, Manchester United and Chelsea will need to agree on a fee. Talks are in the process right now. Now, there is a few people worried that because Levi Colwill has done his ACL and injured, Chelsea may put those funds into a centre-back and walk away from Garnacho. There is people worrying about that, but considering they knew that Colwill did his ACL about 3 days ago and have still been in talks to Manchester United since, says to me that won't be the case. Now, Chelsea value Garnacho at 30 to 35 million, Manchester United value Garnacho at 50 million, and have sort of said, give us 50 million or we won't sell it, which I think is fair for Manchester United. I think 50 million in this market, when Gittins was 55, when you're seeing Madueke 52, I think it's fair. United are using Chelsea's valuation of Madueke to get what they want for Garnacho, which is fair. And we obviously know that Garnacho's on low wages, so if we don't sell him and he's in the reserves on his wages, it's not going to massively impact Manchester United. The reason we want Garnacho to be sold, and the reason Garnacho being sold would be big, is because that could unlock the door to a potential Carlos Baleba deal. Now, we know that Brighton do not want to sell Carlos Baleba. They'd like to hang on to him another year and are thinking of offering him a new contract because he's only on 12k a week, which means he'll have a release clause of maybe 100 million in place next year, but a new contract where he could be on maybe 30, 40k a week for the next year, give him another year at Brighton. But Manchester United are knocking on Carlos Baleba's door. Manchester United are trying to unsettle him to see if they can get a player to force the move, which could potentially get his price tag down. Now, Brighton want 104 million for Carlos Baleba. We value him at 70 million. Brighton wanted 90 million for João Pedro. They sold him for 60. Now, Carlos Baleba, has a higher ceiling than Caicedo. They might want nearer what they got for Caicedo. I do think that for me, the cheapest we could get Carlos Baleba for is about 90 million. I think they will want 90 million up front. United value him at 70. I think Brighton will probably push for above 110, but I think maybe 90 to 100 million is what we could realistically get him for if he pushes for the move. There was a rumour of Toby Collier being involved going the other way, but that has been basically told, no, that's not going to happen. But we've got updates on Alejandro Garnacho leaving, and we get 50 million pure profit for him. And now we've got developments on Højlund leaving, which could further help Manchester United fund a move to do a deal for Carlos Baleba, which apparently is more realistic than we first think. Now, I still think that we won't get Baleba. I still think it will be too much of a difficult deal to do. But indications are saying, this is possible. United believe they can do a deal, and United wouldn't have inquired unless they had some kind of belief that something could be done. As Alex said, Brighton always get massive fees. Best hope we can get favourable terms and instalments. Exactly. I wonder what Garnacho will do to devalue himself. That's the worry with Garnacho. If Garnacho stays at his wages, not a big deal, but his value drops, it's best we get rid. I agree. We don't want to keep Garnacho in the reserves for another year because his value will drop. But we just want to, we want to make sure we get fair value. So Chelsea have lost Colwill, but they're still looking at Garnacho. Chelsea have crazy money because they think they're going to get 60 million for Nicholas Jackson. They got 50 million for Madueke. They're not worried, Chelsea. But yeah, So let's talk about it. Obviously, Chelsea fans think 50 million for Garnacho is a joke. And look, I understand why, as a Chelsea fan, you wouldn't want to spend 50 million on Garnacho. But my point as a Manchester United fan is you spent 55 million on Gittins that got 1 goal in the last 6 months and was worse than Garnacho last year in a harder league, in an easier league. I think Gittins is a great player, by the way. I think he's a great talent, but I'm just using that as an example. You sold Madueke for 52 million. You value Jackson at 80 million, and Langa's going for 55 million. So United have every right to value Garnacho at 50 million. The only players aged 21 or under with more goal contributions than Garnacho was Desiree Doué and Lamine Yamal. And Desiree Doué and Lamine Yamal were playing with some of the best players in the world and the best sides in the world. Garnacho was doing it in the worst Manchester United side in 30 years. You know, he's frustrating, he misses big chances, he's got an ego. But I think Garnacho for 50 million is not a bad deal in the slightest. Josiah says that Baleba will be the most important signing for United if we can get him. Very excited about if we get him. Not very excited about Sesko. I think Baleba would be a bigger signing than Sesko. I think Sesko is a great signing, and I think because of Højlund being so underwhelming, people are worried about Sesko. But Sesko is definitely further developed than Højlund. It's still a risk, he's still raw, but he's definitely further along in his development than Højlund when we signed Højlund. So it's not quite going to be a Rasmus Højlund case Sesko. But I do think Baleba is the more exciting of the two. So yeah, let's get into news. Let's get into Højlund news, because Milan have put in a bit of a crazy, weird offer for Højlund. AC Milan and Manchester United have a draft agreement for Højlund. Now, they say draft agreement. The deal would be an initial loan worth 4 million, so we get about 3 million, with an option to buy for 40 million euros, which is 34 million pounds, which would mean we'd make about 37 million in total, which is his book value. However, Højlund wants to stay at Man United and needs convincing. Next week will be crucial. Now, why this is interesting. Last night it was said that United have opened the door to Rasmus Højlund on loan with an option to buy. Milan are looking for a striker to bring in, and they're looking and have looked at Højlund to bring into the squad. There's now reports saying that Milan would prefer to bring in Højlund than someone like Dusan Vlahovic. So right now, if reports are believed to be true, if there's Italian media reports believed to be true, Milan are willing to give Manchester United what they want for Højlund. Manchester United have just got to convince Højlund to leave. Apparently, we have a draft agreement. Milan are putting their offer. We're very happy with that. Oh, wow. Wow. Oh, my. Well, oh. So, Bournemouth are about to sign. This is really irrelevant to Man United. But they've got an agreement with Bafode Diakite, which is a centre-back to replace Sabani. So, Bournemouth have just made a really good signing, it looks like. Off topic, centre-back I've been talking about. But going back to Højlund. Going back to Rasmus Højlund, look, apparently, according to Italian media, Milan are willing to give Manchester United what they want to bring Højlund in on loan with an option to buy. All Manchester United need to do is convince Højlund to go. Here's my worry. Højlund with an obligation to buy, tick. Højlund with an option to buy, X. If Højlund wants to stay at Manchester United and fight for his place and believes he can challenge Sesko, and we have Sesko and Højlund going up against each other, and we're only getting loans with options to buy for Højlund, Højlund staying isn't the end of the world. I want a permanent deal for Højlund now, or I want an obligation to buy. I do not want option to buy, because all that means is that we are letting Højlund's not on high wages, so letting Højlund go on loan for a year isn't helping us at all financially in the slightest, and we might as well just have him as a backup to Benjamin Sesko for depth and be greedy. I think for Højlund's development, a loan would be better for him. I think he would do well at Milan, and maybe it could get his price tag up. Maybe other people could be interested in Højlund, and maybe we can get our money back on him. But my mindset on Højlund is because he's not on Jadon Sancho or Rashford wages, so a loan for Højlund for me isn't beneficial unless there's an obligation to buy, unless we strongly believe that this loan is going to do Højlund a load of good and he can come back to Manchester United and challenge Sesko the following year when we're in Europe. That's my mindset. For Højlund, yes, I just want money or go away. Like, we've agreed something, we're desperate to get rid of Højlund, and if I'm Rasmus Højlund and Man United are accepting loans with options to buy, that's a hint you're not wanted, mate. That's a hint you're not wanted in the slightest, so you should change your stance and leave. But at the same time, unless we're getting actual money for Højlund, he can stay and challenge Sesko. He can stay and challenge Sesko unless we're getting actual money. Because I don't see the point of a loan with an option to buy. I want an obligation. Fabrizio said we could get a 12 million loan fee. Well, 12 million loan fee for Højlund, and maybe a loan with an option to buy, but I don't think Milan would be that stupid. Yeah. Rasmus loan gives us a year to evaluate and raise money. Current bids, we are lucky to break even, and that's the only thing as well. I think if we're in Champions League next year, and Højlund does well on loan, and he says he wants to come back to United and push Sesko, we're all for it. I guess, and I guess with not being in Champions League or not being in Europe, we don't probably need Højlund, Sesko, and Xerxes. I just would like actual money for Højlund. If we sell, there's a good possibility for Baleba. Baleba wants to move, but we need to sell. We need to sell to make that possible, basically. And then if we do sell and we do good business there, then yeah. Alejandro Garnacho, Bruno Fernandes, and Diogo Dalot have all given Højlund short shrift on the pitch. Players were generally reluctant to pass Højlund the ball in his first season and had reservations about his hold-up play. And in pre-season alone, Højlund has vented at Dalot over purposely delayed pass. In Atlanta, he kicked the post after Dorgu kicked at the goal. Apparently, Højlund's annoyed with his teammates for not passing to him. Of course, that's come up from Samuel Lutkers. Samuel Lutkers likes to stir the pot. So I'm not really going to deep too much what Samuel Lutkers has had to say about this Rasmus Højlund player fallout. I think he's stirring the pot. But apparently players like Garnacho and Bruno and Dalot have all been reluctant to pass Højlund the ball because I don't know. Bruno, I think, has always tried to give Højlund the ball. Samuel Lutkers said that Højlund was always destined to fail. Switching to the same agency that represented Ten Hag marked his card with some teammates. One United player shook their head at the mention of Højlund. Another lamented how few tackles he won, his lack of press and aerial sickness. This is what Samuel Lutkers is coming out. Basically, Samuel Lutkers just put out a report saying that dressing room leaks are basically dressing room leaks, blah, 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 probably stirring the pot, probably not completely true. Basically saying that Manchester United don't want Højlund, get out of here, they don't rate him. Basically is what Lutkers has put out, stirring the pot. But I mean, if that is true, more reason for Højlund to go. AC Milan are now working on a deal. More confirmation. Really reliable source of Matteo Moretta has confirmed this Højlund offer story. This has come out from Matteo Moretta. Now, Matteo Moretta is more credible than the original source we were just reading. And Matteo Moretta has come out with this and said that AC Milan are indeed working on a deal to sign Højlund on loan with a buy option. The loan fee is about £4 to £5 million with an option of 40 million. I want an obligation. Højlund wants to stay. Let's see how this develops. But more news coming in of this Milan offer for Højlund as well. So interesting news updates there. Yeah, Lutkers. I'm not giving much attention to the Lutkers report on Højlund about this player and that player not liking Højlund and Højlund always destined to fail, because Lutkers just has an agenda against Højlund. Like, I'm not particularly convinced on Højlund, but like he's got a blatant agenda against him. So I just think it's a little bit drama. I don't like those kind of reports that come out when it's like Bruno Fernandes, Dalot and Garnacho didn't want to pass Højlund the ball. I just don't like those kind of reports when journalists do that. I'm like, you've done a journalism degree to then go and spread meaningless gossip that's not going to do our club any favours. All it's going to do is wind people up online and all of that. What do I think will happen to Malacia? Being totally honest, not a clue. I think he will go. I think he's going to go for cheap as F on deadline day. Like Donny van der Beek, how we just let Donny van der Beek go for about 500k in the end. Like that, and we had like add-ons potentially going to 5 million. I think that it's literally the same with Malacia. I think we're going to let him go for like £1 million. I think we could let him go for absolute peanuts, if I was going to be totally honest. I don't know what's going on with him. Sancho's going to wait until deadline day and go to Dortmund on loan. I could put money on it. Anthony's going to go to Betis on loan on deadline day. Oh wow! Look at Newcastle. David Ornstein bomber. Newcastle considering a move to sign Samu from FC Porto. The 21-year-old striker is high among striker options. No formal approach or guarantee it happens in Spain as well. But he's liked by Newcastle. So Newcastle looking at Samu of Porto, who I remember he destroyed De Ligt. So that's Newcastle there. Bournemouth are looking at a really good centre-back. I mean, some of the Premier League clubs are looking to do some real good business out there. Will Samu want to go to Newcastle? Oh, man. Benjamin Sisko is undergoing his medical as we speak, by the way. He's undergoing his Man United medical as we speak. Samu is good. Samu is good for Newcastle, but if he rejects Newcastle, oh my. Oh my. Oh, where have you found that? Is the Muppeteers put that on Twitter, or is that in their video? Muppeteers, what have they said? They haven't said anything on their Twitter yet, but assuming they said it on YouTube. Muppeteers saying at Benfica and Anthony. But that could be one to watch. So we've got Benfica, Anthony, Samo to Newcastle, Diakite to Bournemouth's a really good bit of business. Thank you very much for the super chats. What's my 11 for the Arsenal game? I don't know if Sesko will be ready for the Arsenal game, if I was going to be totally honest. So I'd probably go with, I think, do I want to go with Agate? Yeah, I'm going to go with Agate. Because I'm just thinking defensive. Arsenal, if you're difficult to break down Arsenal struggle, I will go with Dorgu left wing back, Ahmad right wing back, because I feel like you could put Delo right wing back off the basis that he's going to be coming up against. Actually, no, he's coming up against Martinelli. So Ahmad right wing back, Dorgu left wing back. Back three would be Euro on the right, De Ligt in the middle, and for now, I guess I'd put Luke Shaw on the left because we don't have Leach fit, or Aiden Heaven on the left. I think I'd go Luke Shaw because he's played a bit more in pre-season, but I'd probably actually Aiden Heaven left centre back, De Ligt central centre back, Euro right centre back, Dorgu left wing back, Ahmad right wing back. I would still go with Agate and Maino in the pivot. And the reason I would go with Agate and Maino in the pivot is I'm just thinking the games Agate was good in was against Liverpool and was against Arsenal. When we dominate possession, Agate is shocking. But when we need to defend and win the ball back, I think Agate will be annoying. I'd then go Bruno as a 10 ahead of them and then split Mbeumo and Cunha. A little bit like we saw versus Everton, put Dorgu in the place of Delo. I think is what I'd do because I don't think Sesko will be ready. But I think because he's not had a pre-season game with us, but then we can take Sesko off the bench. We're probably not going to have Baleba for that game, being realistic. We don't even know if we'll get Baleba. So there's talk of Benfica looking at Anthony. De Ligt or Maguire. I think Maguire's just had some injury concerns. Mount has impressed in pre-season. Yeah, Mount and Sesko to come off the bench. If we line up like that with Mount and Sesko to come off the bench, Xerxes quite not fit. Mazraoui's quite not fit, but yeah. Casemiro over Agate. The only reason I would go with Agate over Casemiro is legs. Arsenal are probably the best team athletically at covering ground, and I just think it's legs. We could even argue that we do Casemiro Agate pivot, play Bruno as one of the 10s, and Mbeumo up, Casemiro Agate pivot and drop Maino. You could do a Casemiro Agate pivot and drop Maino if we wanted defensive stability. I think Mount could have a good season. Mount is looking good. Mount in pre-season has looked good. He looked sharp. Other than the Europa League final, he looked good the final few games of the season. Mount still definitely has a lot to bring at Manchester United. He still definitely does. Yeah, let's get into Sesko news. We'll talk about Sesko and then we will talk about Baleba. So, Benjamin Sesko is set to undergo his medical today ahead of signature of 5-year contract at Manchester United. So, boom, set to be announced tomorrow in the friendly. Benjamin Sesko was soon favoured over Ollie Watkins due to his age, ceiling for growth, opportunity to work alongside Cunha and Mbeumo. So again, Benjamin Sesko was soon favoured over Ollie Watkins due to his age, ceiling for growth, and opportunity to work alongside Cunha and Mbeumo. I think it could work quite well. That's what's been said on Sesko. Now, what we know on Carlos Baleba, and as we covered yesterday, is that Carlos Baleba is fully open to joining Manchester United. The club know this. Personal terms seen as no issue. However, the deal is seen as difficult due to Brighton's demands with instalments United are not giving up. So we're looking at Carlos Baleba. It's seen as possible. The player is open to the move, but it will be difficult, is what's being said in regards to Baleba. But interestingly, these were other updates we got in regards to Baleba. And Romano did say it's not over yet. Manchester United want to find a new midfielder on the market. I will tell you more about Carlos Baleba and Manchester United in the next hours or days. United Scout, who's a good insider at United, said that Manchester United believe that they can fund the Carlos Baleba deal by selling players quickly. Manchester United inside think if they can sell Garnacho, they can offload Højlund, get rid of Anthony, they think they can get Carlos Baleba in the door. We wouldn't have inquired about Carlos Baleba if we thought it was completely impossible. We wouldn't have inquired about it if we thought it was completely impossible. The fact that we're inquiring and looking about it, we think it's a possibility. It won't be easy to do. It will be difficult to do. But Manchester United must believe they've got a chance, even if it's a small chance, at doing this deal, which, is interesting. And hopefully we do get him. Baleba's really good, but he's still a risk. He's young, I guess, in that sense. Absolutely not. I want Baleba and Maino together. That's the future. Absolutely wouldn't sell Maino. Yeah. I was talking about Xerxes for a while and we got Xerxes. I've been talking about Baleba for a while. Maybe we'll get Baleba. You never know. I see Wharton going to Liverpool. Yeah, I think Liverpool are going to sign Adam Wharton next year. People say Mount should be sold. If someone gave us 14 million for Mount, I'd sell him because we can't guarantee he'll stay fit. Hayden Hackney's one to watch. Same with a Gomez if you can't get Baleba because at least we'll have someone in there that can play DM. But Hayden Hackney's not the level of Carlos Baleba. That's the problem you've got. Like Hayden Hackney is a drop off from Carlos Baleba, if we're being totally honest. So guys, that is your Manchester United news. I just wanted to do a short news show so we're up to date. Newcastle considering a move for Sanu outside of Manchester United news, but Sesko is doing his medical as we speak. Obviously United are looking at Baleba. Manchester United believe, and Baleba might be closer or more realistic than we think, which is mad, because United they're Baleba. Manchester United believe they can do a deal for Carlos Baleba if they sell well. So United have some confidence that if they can get the sales they want to do, they can do a deal for Baleba. So there's a possibility that this could happen. Still don't think it will happen because it's difficult. But Garnacho's agreed terms. Milan have made some Højlund offer. That's been confirmed by now 2 or 3 sources. So interesting news and developments coming in. But I just wanted to do a short live show because I will be back later. Thank you for watching. Bye.